Welcome to the podcast to gain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to be insightful in technology. I'm your co-host, Byron Davis, and I am here with
Shy.
Guy. And today our guest is RJ Kedziora, the co-founder of Estenda Solutions, a company specializing in custom software and data analysis for healthcare and medical expertise. Or enterprises, my bad, I said expertise. Throughout his extensive career, Mr. Kedziora has demonstrated an exceptional ability to design, develop, and implement successful software projects that have significantly advanced patient care. In today's episode, we'll explore Mr. Kedziora's remarkable professional journey, gain insights into his innovative strategies for enhancing patient outcomes, and learn how Estenda Solutions is at the vanguard of healthcare technology. Please join us for our illuminating discussion today. And first off, I want to start off, RJ. I just wanted to say thank you for scheduling some time to meet with us today. And if you'd like to start off with just giving us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And after that introduction, no pressure. What have I accomplished in the past 20 years of my life? Yeah, it is crazy. My name is RJ Kedziora. Thank you for that nice introduction. I am the co-founder, one of the two co-founders of Estenda Solutions, focused on digital healthcare software development and consulting. We typically find ourselves working on cutting-edge, innovative projects that require research, focused around typically patient care. We don't get into too much on the billing side and the back end side of things from that perspective. But how can we use data to improve patient health and wellness is what it amounts to.
Okay.
Yeah. My day to day, as a co-founder, I think of myself as an entrepreneur. What do I do? What is my title today? If you looked at my LinkedIn profile, it lists like 4 or 5 different things. So my day to day does definitely vary, but if you focus it down on the core of what I do, I think of it as a problem solver at heart, but creating products from the technology and people perspective. How do I put all that together? And then from a corporate perspective, I do play in the business development side, people management side of things, running our HR systems. So day to day, it's very interesting.
Oh, can I ask, what's your favorite part of the co-founder experience?
A lot of people, when you think of being an entrepreneur, you're like, you don't have a boss. Well, I have lots of bosses. My clients, for one, the people that work for me, they may not be my bosses, but I do feel accountable to them. I want to make them have a good experience working at Estenda and as part of their journey. We very much stress what people typically call work-life balance. I heard someone a while ago talk about it as work-life harmony, because balance means always equal, and it's not always equal depending on what you're doing and what your family situation may be. It has to ebb and flow from time to time. So one of the things that happens in software development typically as projects come towards completion is you can run into like nightmare scenarios of working that 70, 80 hours a week. We really try and strive and not do that. And even from a vacation perspective, it's like there's never a good time to take vacation in our industry, let alone any industry. So take it. As long as we're aware of it, we can plan around it and make it happen.
And you noted that you're on LinkedIn. Are there any other socials or anything you'd like to add that people can find you?
I call myself a social voyeur. So I have the Facebook's accounts and the Instagram accounts, but LinkedIn is where you'll really find me. It is RJ Kedziora. Officially it's Richard, but nobody's ever called me that. That's never worked. So I go by RJ Kedziora. That's how you find me on LinkedIn, or just the Estenda.com website is another great way to get a hold of me. See how I can help you. We work with a mix of big Fortune 50 clients, but then also startups, because it's part of that problem solver mentality. It's like if you're a big corporation, typically in the R&D group, how do we help you develop that product? Or if you're a startup, as we work with some startups, they're like, I want to give back. I want to do something in healthcare, but I don't really know a lot about healthcare. And others are like, I know healthcare, but I don't know technology. So we can help, in both of those journeys.
Okay. Before we dive more into like the healthcare side of things and kind of what you're currently working on and where things are now, can you kind of describe like I guess your journey from where you started and how you got into software development and
Yeah.
eventually that?
I got incredibly lucky. My parents were able to afford a computer in, I think, 1986, way back when. Um, and that really started me on my journey. So I played my fair share of games. We had the Atari, the ColecoVisions, and all those. I definitely played lots of games growing up. But I was very intrigued, even at that early age, what you could do with the computer and the power of that. So I did go to college in the early 90s for computer science with the intention of going on to get a PhD in artificial intelligence. But then I got a job offer and it was thought, earn a living or take on a lot more debt. And started earning a living really quick there. And it worked out nicely. And through the years, I worked for a variety of companies. Got my start working for U.S. Steel of all companies. I went to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. U.S. Steel was a big manufacturer there. It was funny when I got my first job offer there. It's a huge 60-story building, one of the bigger buildings in Pittsburgh. I'm like, I'm gonna be up at the top of that building, and wound up on the 7th floor. I was like, oh, well, it's a little anticlimactic, but had a great experience there as a software developer, and then worked my way through some consulting companies, and then late 90s got into like pharma. And then when myself and another good friend, Drew Lewis, and I started Estenda, we focused on healthcare because it was really that, okay, what can we do in terms of, really making an impact in the world? I've developed accounting systems. I developed railroad car scheduling systems, which were challenging and interesting, but in the end, it's like, okay, great. You have a couple more, bolts on a shelf or dollars in the bank account. But to be able to develop systems and solutions that helped doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals provide better patient care or directly to patients, it makes a difference and gives you that warm and fuzzy feeling, when you go to sleep at night that you're making a difference.
Yeah. Can you tell us about I guess an initial project that you had that really like reinforced your like passion for what you were doing or what you were pursuing?
Yeah, we were fortunate. Our first project to start as Estenda was a congressional grant for development of a diabetes disease management solution for military healthcare. So we got to work with the Joslin Diabetes Center, one of the premier research institutes in diabetes, Walter Reed Army Medical Center, um, Boston VA, the Indian Health Services, which is responsible for the American Indian here in the U.S. We work with Tripler Army Base, a lot of military healthcare. So it was a great experience, like off the bat. Like, okay, how can we really make a difference? Fast forward 20 years now, healthcare obesity is a major challenge. And if then diabetes factors into that pretty quickly. So, we still do a lot of work in diabetes, but over the years, we expanded into other arenas. So you think of diabetes as a condition and, that inspiring story and, why I love what I do. In the beginning, it was, okay, we don't have a lot of data about what's going on with you as an individual. Because when you go to the doctor, you're only there for like 10, 15 minutes. You don't have a lot of time. It's really about what you do outside of that visit and how do you care better for yourself. You eat better, be more physically active. You don't have to run a 5K, park a little further away, take the steps kind of thing. Those things make a big difference. So how do we help the healthcare professionals provide better care and understanding of what the patients did or are doing at home? So we develop solutions along those lines, how to integrate that data into their medical record system, developed new patient surveys to better understand the patient experience, to really learn how we could, as healthcare professionals, make a difference in their lives, and even developed medication algorithm recommendations. So it's like, okay, patient is on, metformin, which is really a first line drug, the first thing you're going to try, okay, what's the next thing we should do? based on that patient experience. So, at one point I was sitting in a room with, a dozen endocrinologists in a patient case study. And I was like, okay, how do we treat this patient? And 12 docs, there was probably 15 opinions. So everyone turns to me and like, okay, how are you going to do this, RJ? And it definitely made an interesting challenge to figure that out. But we were able to develop a system to help medication recommendations through the years. So, and as part of that journey, working with those doctors, you heard all sorts of anecdotal stories of, from the nurse, from a doctor, from, an aide, using the software, that we found, this specific thing, we helped this patient, is really meaningful. But then as you're developing healthcare software, it usually has to go through like a clinical trial to make sure it really works. So then not only do we have that anecdotal evidence, we actually ran clinical trials to be able to prove that the software did work, did make a difference.
Oh,
Do you
so
ever,
quick question on this.
go ahead.
Along with a lot of, appointments becoming virtual, so did this software like essentially boost the amount of like usage? Like I've had plenty of telehealth appointments. So did that become like more useful during that time?
Yeah, this does go back to the early 2000s. So it's crazy. Like this is pre-smartphone. The internet existed back then, but it was still, pre-smartphone those days. So the technology at the time really was like finger sticks and a lot of paper recording of journals and stuff like that. So we were lucky that as we were developing as a company, and expanding, we came along with the technology in healthcare. So there is a lot of technology in healthcare, but they're really the last industry to embrace the use of data in patient care. So yes, to answer your question, it did make a difference. There was no virtual visits. Back then it was still going in person kind of thing. But it helped enhance the picture, better understanding of that patient to be able to care for them better, make better decisions.
So I want to understand kind of like the usage now for it from a patient standpoint. So we all go to the doctor, we have to fill out a form. We give them the updates when we get into the room about like what we've been going through. Does that information, like that data, get put into the system and then recommendations come up like based on the doctor's, observations, kind of suggestions for them?
Yeah, in what you're describing is a very typical encounter. It's part of that journey that healthcare is really only embracing data now. And how many times you fill out the same survey, even for the same doctor in the same healthcare system. It's like, okay, how many times do I have to tell you to do this X, Y, and Z? It's like you should know that. We've been part of that journey. So yeah, early on in those days, it was like, how do we use that information to make recommendations? So the first part of it was what we did was like stratification. So where are you in terms of level of risk? And then that would help drive decision making. So, if you're new to diabetes or if you've had diabetes for 10 years, is your blood glucose in control or out of control? Those really help drive that decision-making process. And so the more information you have, the better off, the healthcare professional or you as an individual are today. So, we started Estenda in 2003. Fast forward to today, there is now an overwhelming amount of information. So you talk about filling out those paper surveys, but you wear an Apple Watch or a Ring, Samsung's got a Ring coming out. There's all of these devices to track all of this information. You have 10 minutes with that provider. So you can't walk into that visit and be like, hey, look at my Apple Watch data. Here's what my heart rate did yesterday. What does that mean? They just don't have time to work with that and interpret that. So we help companies develop solutions and systems to interpret that data, provide recommendations, and be able to overcome that challenge of only having 10 minutes in interpreting that data. As we work with startups, I have conversations very frequently where it's like, okay, we have all this data. We're going to look for patterns and show the doctor the pattern. And what else? You need to go the next step and provide some meaningful advice and meaningful feedback. There's an oft quoted number that it takes 17 years for research to make it into routine clinical practice. That's probably an older number. It probably happens a little faster today, but there's just so much information out there. Healthcare professionals can't keep up and consume all of this information, which is, as sort of we look forward, I'm looking forward to what AI can do in this world, because AI can consume and be aware of all that information.
How do you, I guess, how do you, and you said a lot of this takes research on your part. I guess, how do you, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess draw a line between the technical side of what you have to do and actual like the medical and like health implications. Like how do you draw the dots for that in order
Mhm.
to
It's a good question. I am not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. Not a lawyer, don't play one on TV, but have lots of conversations with doctors, lawyers, nurses, nutritionists, exercise physiologists, people providing this patient care.
Mhm,
And technology is important, but these solutions we're developing in other companies out there in the world, it's very much about the people in the process
mhm,
that is going on. Because whether or not I use Java or Python, .NET, deployed to Azure or AWS Cloud, you can do the same thing in all of these. And there are considerations, that we're in different situations want to work better than the other. What type of database do I want to use? Which AI system do I want to implement? But in the end, technology is only one component of it. So when we do look at that research, and we very much partner with the doctors, the PhDs, but we also have our own PhDs on staff to help drive those processes and designing the studies and analyzing the data and writing the journals
mhm,
to help us in that. But yeah, it's very much you follow the scientific process of generating hypothesis, generating approach. Here's what we think will make a difference and an impact in patient with heart disease, or we want to develop a new methodology for helping people lose weight. So GLP-1s, the Ozempics out there are huge. They're all over the news, kind of thing, and they do make a difference, but they don't change behavior. So when you go off GLP-1s, there's a high level of side effects for a lot of these medications, and they cost a lot of money. So you're not going to be on it for 10 years. If you're on it for 6 months, you lose some weight, it didn't change any behavior. So that weight's going to come back.
mhm.
So, we've helped some people, some companies develop, weight loss solutions, and we're revamping one now to really address this very specific problem. How do we help change behavior post GLP-1 usage to make a difference? You do have to learn to eat better. Um, is,
Like that approach to it is actually coming up with a plan afterwards.
Mhm.
Like I'm at least blessed in my family that I'm the one with the least health issues. So I feel like, the method and the actions, the routine that you have in your daily life can definitely affect how you handle stuff. And then just getting on a medication at the end of the day and just accepting that, hey, this is something I have to take, but not you taking the actions, or at
Yeah.
least knowing what to do to actually get off of it. Because I don't feel like taking a medication for the rest of your life is the best thing that anyone wants to do, really.
mhm. Yeah, medication has its purpose, and definitely lots of individuals need those medications. But particularly in the case of diabetes and obesity to some extent, we're changing our thinking around what it means to be obese, and how we approach that. But there is an aspect of, if you take better care of yourself, eat better, move more, you can make a difference. That is not true with everybody. It's just not. You can't say, globally, across populations of people, like, oh yeah, just eat better and move more. That's easy to say. But to do it is very difficult.
Mhm.
One of the things that's been coming to the forefront in healthcare too that we've helped people with, companies with, is the social determinants of health. So where do you live? What kind of food do you have access to? It makes a difference if you live in what's called a food desert. Like there's just not a healthy supermarket within easy access to you.
Mhm.
You're not going to eat healthy. It's difficult. Or, it's like you have three kids to feed, and it's like, okay, where does the money come to feed everybody healthy food? Because healthy food does cost more. So you need to work within the boundaries of what's possible, and looking at those social determinants of health, one at a population level, help figure out where different solutions make sense for different populations, and then as individuals as well. So.
And to kind of key in on what you were saying about kind of like things have just changed over time and people are just more, I feel like health conscious, kind of like with Apple Watches and whatnot. The number of conversations of just people at the office that talk about, oh, my rings for my Apple Watch made me active today. Like things like that are like actually teaching actions, like you were saying. But I guess in your opinion, what do you feel like currently in the field needs to make a change in order to make things better?
I think there's I think of that as two different ways. Um, One, healthcare as an industry has to change from the sick care model. They only
Hmm.
get paid for the most part if you're sick, you're cared for when you're sick, to one of wellness, to a value-based model. And we are slowly making that transition. So the faster we can make it, the better off we'll be. But U.S. healthcare costs are the most by quite a bit compared to other countries in the world. But our outcomes are not as good. We are not in the top in terms of healthcare outcomes, which it just seems crazy and sort of counterintuitive. Like, okay, we live in the United States, but we don't have the best healthcare out there from that perspective. If you have cancer or something like that, yes, come here, take care of it. But for that routine, it is just not really there, unfortunately. So I think we have to make that shift. And part of that shift is um, at pricing.
Hmm.
So there is new legislation on the book. So I had shoulder surgery 6 odd years ago now. Nobody could tell me how much it was going to cost. If you go into a surgery for anything today, nobody can tell you how much it costs, which is just crazy. Like there is no other industry that, just isn't like, okay, this is how much it costs. You might not like how much it costs, but you're aware of how much it's going to cost. And that's just not true in healthcare. And there is recent legislation that hospitals now need to publish, how much things cost and stuff like that. But the government needs to start, helping those people be holding them more accountable. But likewise, I think us as individuals need to be more accountable. And that's where I think you referenced the Apple Watch and similar technology helps drive that conversation and helps us learn to really figure that out. And how do we do that? What do I need to know as an individual to care better for myself? And I think we're
Hmm.
going to start seeing that too as, our parents start getting older and older kind of thing. And, my kids are now, in their 20s kind of thing. So went through that, early life, and now going to have to deal with the elders as we go along. But there's just so much that's possible nowadays.
Hmm. Well, thank you for that. Trying to see where kind of we left off in terms of our
Oh, we've been all over the place. It's been
Yeah.
fun.
I guess if we could transition to this portion. So how can others get to where you are and what tips would you like to give?
I, I think one of them is that tech is important.
Hmm.
So, I came up through the software development ranks, and there are a lot of people in schools and coming out through with comp sci degrees or other related software degrees. You don't even need a comp sci degree these days to be able to make an impact in the field. You can learn how to program and develop on your own. But I think it's one of the things that I always feel led to my success, in the industry, was not just that knowledge of technology, but the understanding, the appreciation about the people and the process,
Hmm.
and that you need to tell a story. the ability to communicate is so important. So, as you're working on a software project and you're using a particular programming language and it's not good, the project's not going right, over the years, I've had programmers that have been like, okay, if we switch to this, it'll solve all our problems. Well, no, it won't. But at that stage, when it's like a newer technology, you don't even know what you don't know yet. So it's like it's really hard to say, oh, it's going to solve all the problem. And then how do you go to senior management and be like, oh, we're just going to switch to this technology and solve all the problems? Well, why? Tell the story and make it matter to them, make it compelling. And part of that is just empathy. It's something at Estenda we do try and teach and emphasize, and it's in our processes you see as we go through like our review processes and feedback and even requirement gathering and stuff like that. It's empathy, understanding the user, who's using the software, what are their challenges. So we do provide, medical education through like YouTube videos and stuff. So nobody's going to be a doctor, nobody's treating patients, but you do if you're working in heart failure, weight loss, diabetes, any, other chronic conditions, multiple sclerosis or mental health challenges. What is that like for that patient, for that individual? Because that's who you're developing for. You're not developing for yourself. It might be great that you can do that data entry for them really fast, but that's all you're doing and you're a software developer. You're not a nurse, you're not a doctor with someone banging on the door. You got to see the next patient. So you really, I think those are the keys. So recognizing tech is important, but it's really about the people and the process. Tell a story and empathy.
Okay.
Hmm. What is it? So I feel like we've had a lot of people come through talk about the communication aspect when it comes into tech, like the telling the story, making it applicable to the people you're telling it to as well, to kind of make the movement actually, progress. So yeah, I appreciate that one. It's like that is some really great advice.
Yeah, it probably applies to any industry,
Yeah.
I think, but is particularly as we think of software development, it's very easy as a software developer. That's my background of sitting there focused on your computer, day in and day out, and you really do have to gain that empathy and tell a good story.
I'd like to ask more for I guess the people that are still on their like academic journey. Do you feel like there are any current languages or software products that you feel like would help someone? I'm not gonna say have the leg up, but like what's currently at the forefront of what's being used in the industry? Do you feel like there are any?
Yeah, I would not necessarily an individual language, but to pick one, I think Python, R, those languages, because they're much more focused on data and the data science, because that's what's driving the world. Many of people have called data the new oil. But as we've worked with clients and developed products over the years and our storytelling in selling solutions to individuals and figuring out what to do, it's like once we have this data, you're just going to be surprised at what becomes and possible, and the new insights that you're gonna see once you have this data. So a strong focus on data. So if I had to pick particular languages, Python, R, but above all, AI. Um, so AI is not going to take any programmer jobs anytime soon, but people using AI will. It's just making a huge difference, and it's not even today what's possible. Just think where it's going to be a year from now, 2 years from now. So learn and understand how to use particularly Gen AI effectively in what you do. Fortunately, as a software developer, a lot of companies are embedding the AI into the tools and stuff like that. But I guess from that advice perspective, even, when I was early in my career and you could start Googling stuff, I got my start reading books. But once you could start, searching the internet for stuff and finding solutions, and before Gen AI, there was like Stack Exchange, where people find stuff. People would often just copy and paste stuff and not know what they're copying and paste. Be aware of what you're doing. Learn and understand from that. Same thing with the AI. You can ask the AI now, how do I solve this problem? What's wrong with my code? Don't just blindly cut and paste, really understand what it's doing, and be aware of it. Makes a difference.
Do you feel like you've had any hurdles or obstacles in adapting to AI now?
I think my hurdle and obstacle is getting more and more people to jump on the bandwagon.
Okay.
Because it's, as I go to various healthcare conferences and talk to individuals and in marketing folks, it's making a difference in, many industries, marketing, healthcare. And it's like someone will say, I wasn't impressed. I'm like, well, you really have to learn how to use it.
Mhm.
Think of it as like an intern or first year resident or something like that. And if you give it more information, you're going to be better off. So ask it to write like Stephen Hawking or Stephen King, or whoever, and it'll write like Shakespeare, and it will completely transform what it writes. Right? If you're not happy with it, tell it to write like a PhD, and it will completely transform what it writes. And I did a webinar called AI in Product Development a couple weeks ago. It's available on our website and our YouTube account. But I asked, and I use ChatGPT because it's sort of like the most frequently used one these days. I want to develop a digital health application to help people get over the fear of peanut butter being stuck to the roof of their mouth. I was reading some book, and that was like the main character's, challenge. And I thought, oh, deathly afraid of peanut butter being stuck to the roof of the mouth. So I asked ChatGPT to help me develop an application for this situation. And it comes back and goes, really? Are you sure you want it? Like, I'm detecting a note of sarcasm. And it just caught me off guard. It was just one of those things. It was like, oh, wow. It recognized that this is unusual.
Mhm.
And I said yes, and it generated all sorts of stuff for me. But that's the power of the technology, like in healthcare, ambient listening. So instead of a doctor taking notes and having to be heads down in the EMR and write everything you're telling, that your doctor, the technology can listen in the room and transcribe those notes. But it does more than transcribe, because transcribing is like word for word. It understands what you're saying and translates it into an actual note. So in an example I heard at one of these conferences, the patient was like, oh, yeah, my legs really hurt at night. And so to help me go to sleep, I have a couple shots of whiskey.
Mhm.
So the ambient aware AI technology doesn't write that. It says patient self-medicates. And so it understood the context of what the patient was talking about and transcribed that into something meaningful to the doctor and to the next person that was going to read that note. And so that's today, let alone what's going to happen a year from now.
That was literally my last doctor's appointment, and it was the craziest thing. Like, she pulled her phone out and was like, "Can I record? Do you mind if I use AI to, transcribe my notes so I don't have to sit here and type?" And I was like, "Sure." And it's just crazy to hear that that's like just commonplace nowadays. So that's my mom is more tinfoil hat kind of kind of person. So I definitely feel like you said, the hurdle is getting more people on the bandwagon of kind of like accepting where things are so we can improve where they're going. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like it just takes people being more educated and like getting over that fear of understanding that'll really like push us forward.
Yes, and there are challenges. We don't want to overgloss. It does have tendencies to hallucinate or make up facts and sound
Mhm.
very authoritative. So you have to check it. So you think of it as like that intern, that first year, medical student.
Mhm.
Verify what it's saying, but it can make a difference.
Yeah. Sha, did you have any other questions at this juncture before we get into the insightful quote?
I would say like I'm really surprised that they're at least, asking permission. 'Cause
Oh
normally
yeah.
just it's like normally it's like, once something's implemented, it's a standard now. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So I do like that you admitted like the hallucinations. are a possibility. Just make sure there is like someone. That's why I feel like there's still importance of having an expert evaluate or someone going over it that understands the subject, understands the topic. And this for anything AI puts out. Because sometimes I've gotten a couple things that don't make sense. Even with the Gen AI stuff and the pictures, it's just like
Oh yes, definitely.
pictures are coming, they're coming out better. They are. Like, I think just off random stuff, I was trying to see like, hey, can you create a bunny with wings? And it made like a bunny with an ear, like the bunny ear as the wings. And I was just like, we're getting somewhere, but
Yeah.
even off of that, it's like a just take note of stuff. Because I can imagine the Gen AI with pictures when it comes to like just evaluating, like say someone gets an X-ray scan, something's out of place, and they send it through like AI, and they just wanted to kind of pick which part or label these things,
Mhm.
right? So that could be something that's useful in the future, like.
It's useful today. That is a very common use case today of using AI to evaluate images because the AI, it's not the Gen AI,
Yeah.
but it is FDA. There are many FDA approved algorithm systems out there that evaluate breast exams, diabetic retinopathy. It's a photo of the retina of your eye. We actually involved in some of these projects with the Indian Health Services. The technology's there today, making a difference. You know.
Oh, do you have any I guess this would be more so for people that are coming like outside of college and kind of looking around or seeing what places do this. Like, we know there are companies that kind of collect data, sell it to people who are looking to, have something to train on. Do you know if anything's like, let's say key terms, not specific places, but key terms like students can kind of search up to see what's actually available kind of job wise to get their foot in the door for this type of industry?
Digital health, I would say is one of those key terms. The use of it's growing, so look for digital health jobs. Look for the medical terms in combination with software. So diabetes software, heart disease software, patient care software, anything along those lines. Healthcare, medical software. So there is sort of two, I think it is grand categories: healthcare, like people providing the healthcare, doctors, nurses. But there's also the medical field, which is obviously very closely related, but then, the medical device manufacturers that's out there, huge industry, growing industry, where you can make it a difference. So, but, as you talk about people coming out of college, from a startup perspective, what can you do? Um,
Mhm.
what can you create and come up with? There's, I'm part of a run out of New York City. It's called the Hit Lab organizations run out of Columbia University, but they help startups in their journey kind of thing and have conferences, put out a lot of good content. But yeah, do your Googling. There's so much out there. So if you're not sure, ask ChatGPT. And it'll give you ideas.
Great. That's it for me.
All right. I'm sure Shaz talked to you about the motivating and insightful quote for listeners. Did you happen to have one
I,
available?
I, I did, and it's not a direct quote, but I really appreciate it when I heard this. And it was, a 30-second clip of President Obama being interviewed, and they were asking him about what he looks for in people that he hires. And, I hire lots of people, do lots of interviewing. And so I was like, oh, what is this one key thing that President Obama looks for? And he said, be someone who gets stuff done. And I think that's a beautiful statement because that's really, if I can give you a project, give you a problem, and just, I'm there to help you and provide advice and stuff, but walk away and trust that you're going to get it done. You made me happy. You made the customer happy. You made the patient happy. You made the doctor happy. So be someone who gets stuff done.
I want to link that video of him saying it.
But yeah, this has been fabulous. So thank you.
All right. So we'll be sure to add that in our post about the podcast. You'll see it on LinkedIn once the episode becomes available. We currently have a schedule set up, so we'll definitely tag you in those posts. But aside from that, again, just wanted to thank you for taking the time to come on and speak with us. And kind of want to wrap it up with our outro, and we can discuss a little bit after if you have time, because I had a couple questions that I wanted to ask outside of this off the.
Absolutely.
But okay. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to gain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to be insightful in technology. And if you've liked what you heard today in our episode, please subscribe and rate the podcast on your preferred platform of choice. And thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.